Israel and the U.S. are closely coordinating on an effort to defend and counter the expected retaliation from the Islamic Republic of Iran for the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran last week. The U.S. is deploying additional military resources in the region amid reports that the attack could come as early as tomorrow. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz reports.
U.S. General Michael Kurilla, who heads U.S. forces in the Middle East, is in Israel to consult and coordinate with military leaders ahead of a possible attack from Iran in retaliation for the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. Kurilla met Chief of Staff Halevi as Washington and Jerusalem attempt to mobilize the same international and regional coalition that defended Israel against an attack from Iran on April 13th. The U.S. is boosting its forces in the Middle East, sending additional warships and fighter jets to the region. U.S. officials say they are expecting a potential attack that is larger in scope and could involve Hezbollah and other Iranian proxies. According to Axios, the U.S. reportedly believes that the attack could begin as early as tomorrow. On a political level, U.S. Defense Secretary Austin is coordinating with Defense Minister Gallant.
Secretary Austin spoke with Israeli Minister of Defense Gallant this morning about the destabilizing threats posed by Iran, its partners, and proxies. The secretary reiterated ironclad support for Israel's security and informed the minister of additional measures to include ongoing and future defensive force posture changes that the department will take to support the defense of Israel. He also stressed that the unprecedented scale of U.S. support for Israel since October 7th should leave Iran, Lebanese Hezbollah, and other Iranian-backed terrorist groups with no doubt about U.S. resolve.
Prime Minister Netanyahu said that Israel is prepared for any potential attack.
ישראל נמצאת במוכנות גבוהה מאוד לכל תרחיש, הן בהגנה, הן בהתקפה. אנחנו נגבה מחיר כבד מאוד על כל מעשה תוקפנות נגדנו, מכל זירה שהיא.
Jordan will be a key stop on General Kurilla's trip. The Jordanians played a significant role during the April 13th attack by intercepting Iranian drones that entered their territory headed for Israel.
President Joe Biden is changing his tone on hostage negotiations and pressuring Israel once again. The president spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu about the progress of hostage negotiations in the aftermath of the Haniyeh assassination and is apparently not so impressed by Israel's efforts. Let's take a closer look.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has stated he believes reaching a hostage for ceasefire deal is possible and that talks will continue next week in Cairo. But when he told President Biden that this week, Biden reportedly told him to stop BSing. The Biden administration has been critical of Israel's actions in Gaza for many months and even expressed concerns about the assassination of arch-terrorist Ismail Haniyeh. During the call between Netanyahu and Biden, Biden called the assassination poorly timed and emphasized how it could start a regional war. Since Biden dropped out of the presidential race, there are concerns in the White House that Netanyahu is emboldened to take steps he otherwise wouldn't. At the end of the conversation, Netanyahu was also reportedly warned not to take Biden for granted. Yesterday, a team was sent to Cairo for indirect talks as Hamas and Qatar have refused to participate in talks over the killing of Haniyeh. Hamas, on the other hand, has repeatedly tried to change the deal terms to enable their survival as leaders in Gaza. Following the call between the two leaders, the Biden administration urged Israel to act on the deal, implying the obstacle was Israel and not Hamas. Despite the tough phone conversation, Prime Minister Netanyahu emphasized that President Biden respects Israeli sovereignty and cares about the survival and safety of the State of Israel.
Well, Israel is preparing for the event of a major escalation with the Islamic Republic of Iran, even while the government attempts to revive hostage negotiations. Now, here to speak with us about the threat from Iran and the precarious situation Israel faces is senior researcher Kobi Michael. Kobi, thank you so much for joining us today. You know, we're seeing reports that the U.S. is militarily preparing to defend Israel in some cases, but also some stern words for Israel over the hostage talks. What's your take on the Biden administration's approach? And are they really with Israel when it comes to dealing with the Islamic Republic?
Good afternoon. I think that what is happening today with the American administration is something which is pretty similar that that we knew yesterday and the day before yesterday. For the Americans, the cornerstone of their regional vision is seizing the war in the Gaza Strip, which means a hostage deal in any price or in the conditions that are introduced currently. And I think that they are wrong. I think that the red lines that Prime Minister Netanyahu set are correct. And just today, a huge tunnel was revealed beneath the Philadelphia corridor. And I think that it is pretty understood that Israel cannot leave the Philadelphia corridor before destroying all the infrastructure of the tunnels there, and before having a sort of a reasonable solution for the day to come. Therefore, I think that Israel has to continue pressuring militarily Hamas. I think that Hamas is under pressure. I think that the United States has to help Israel on pressuring Hamas by increasing also the pressures on Qatar. And then we will reach to a hostage deal in better conditions and more reasonable deal.
Now, what can we expect to see from this supposed retaliation by the Islamic Republic? I mean, what kinds of capabilities do they actually possess? And how can Israel limit the impact of such an attack from the Islamic Republic?
The Iranian can do what they did before. They cannot do more than that, only in the quantities. I mean, the only two options that they have is to use the variety of aerial platforms that they have, be it drones or cruise missiles or ballistic missiles, and to use their proxies. I mean, this is what they did till today. This is what they did on April 13, and this I assume what Iran will do when their retaliation will come. Maybe it will be more intensified. But in the very same time, I think that we have to remember, and the entire public in Israel and the region should understand that Iran is much more vulnerable than Israel. Its offensive and defensive capacities are much lower than the Israelis ones. And I think that if Iran will exaggerate with its retaliation, then Israel will retaliate on the Iranian retaliation. And this time, the Israeli retaliation will be very hurting for the Iranians. And it is not so complicated for Israel to paralyze many infrastructural systems in Iran, be it water, electricity, oil, you name it. So I think that the Iranians should be much more concerned than the Israelis in this regard.
Now, we are almost out of time, but I just wanted to ask you something interesting we've seen the last few days is that both Hezbollah and the Islamic regime in Iran are pledging explicitly to target civilians intentionally, which is, of course, a war crime. I'm wondering if you've seen any kind of international pressure over such actions and commitments to specifically target civilians, or does the world just have no further way of deterring this regime in Iran?
If they will target civilians, it means that they are totally despaired. And I think that this will be a huge mistake. And the Israeli retaliation will be very, very aggressive one, be it with regard to Lebanon or with regard to Iran. And I would recommend them to rethink about their thoughts in this regard.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Kobi, Michael. Always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
This morning in Israel, there was a tragic terror attack in which 2 individuals were killed and 2 more were seriously injured. Security forces are actively confronting threats on multiple fronts in Israel. Police killed the terrorist who murdered the 2 in the stabbing attack in Holon this morning. And this was as the IDF is actively confronting terrorists in Gaza, Lebanon, and in Judea and Samaria. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
An elderly couple was murdered and at least 2 others injured during a terrorist rampage in the central city of Holon. The Palestinian attacker began his deadly assault by attacking multiple victims in a park and then moved toward the nearby bus station. The other victims are reported in critical to moderate condition. The assailant was shot dead by security forces arriving on the scene. According to police, the attacker is a Palestinian from the territories identified as 34-year-old Omar Audeh from the city of Salfit. In Judea and Samaria, 9 Palestinian gunmen were killed in 2 Israeli drone strikes near Tulkarem. In the first incident, the IDF targeted a cell of terrorists en route to carrying out an attack and killed all inside. Israeli troops then entered Tulkarem to carry out a counter-terrorism operation. A second drone strike was carried out against the cell of gunmen who opened fire on troops. At least 4 gunmen were reported killed in the second strike. Looking north, Israel is on alert for expected retaliation from Hezbollah for last week's targeted killing of Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr in Beirut. Addressing the funeral from his bunker in Beirut, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah vowed that painful revenge will be exacted on Israel. There has been a return to the tit-for-tat cross-border exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah that have taken place since early October. This weekend, the Air Force eliminated leading terrorist Ali Naza Ali from the Hezbollah Southern Command. Fighter jets targeted terrorist infrastructure and military buildings of Hezbollah in the areas of Tir Harfa and Kafar Kila. Some 30 rocket launches were detected that crossed from Lebanon toward the upper and western Galilee. A crash was detected in the Avivim area. Most of the launches were shot down or fell in open areas. There were no casualties. IDF forces attacked the sources of the fire with artillery, along with additional attacks to remove the threats. And on day 303 of the war in Gaza, in an apparent attempt to retaliate for the killing of Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, at least 19 rockets were fired by Hamas at Israel from southern Gaza, in the largest barrage in weeks. There were no reports of injuries, and all the rockets either landed in open areas or were downed by Iron Dome missile defense. The IDF said it carried out drone strikes on the rocket launchers used in the attacks and destroyed them. Meanwhile, the IDF confirmed that it killed a senior Palestinian Islamic Jihad commander in Gaza as fighting raged in the Strip south and center.
With fears of a retaliation by the Islamic Republic on the rise, international airlines are halting their flights to and from Tel Aviv, leaving around 100,000 Israelis stranded abroad. ILTV's Ariella Lachiani is at Ben Gurion Airport with more details for us. Ariella?
Yes, Emily, so I'm here now at Ben Gurion Airport, and as we've seen over the past week, most international airlines have halted their flights to and from Tel Aviv as a result of the increasing fears of an Iranian retaliation. This has consequently left almost 100,000 Israelis stuck abroad as they are unable to get on their flights home. So they've been encouraged to fly to Cyprus or Greece if they can, and El Al will operate more flights in the region to bring them home from there. More in the following report. In the latest developments in the Middle East, Spain's leading airlines, Iberia and Air Europa, have cancelled their flights to Israel, joining a growing list of carriers halting services amid fears of escalating conflict in the region. Iberia Express has suspended its flights to and from Tel Aviv until Monday, while Air Europa has cancelled all flights to and from Israel from Sunday to Wednesday. As tensions rise, at least 18 international airlines have now suspended flights to and from Israel. The list includes major carriers like Air India, Delta, Lufthansa, and United Airlines, with cancellation periods varying from a few days to several weeks. These cancellations have left around 100,000 Israelis stranded abroad, with many advised to travel to Greece or Cyprus to find alternative flights back home. In response, Israel's national carrier, El Al, has maintained its schedule and added extra flights to assist those stranded. Amid the growing concerns, Israel's foreign ministry has launched an online form to assist the tens of thousands of citizens stuck abroad. Meanwhile, Israel's transportation ministry reassured that flights to and from the country remain safe, although some foreign airlines have reduced or delayed their services. As the situation unfolds, the Israeli Civil Aviation Authority has affirmed the safety of the country's airspace, with close monitoring in place should the need arise to close it for security reasons.
And joining me now in studio are Taglit Birthright volunteers Oliver Powell and Max Harry Levy. Thank you so much for joining us in studio today.
Thank you for
Let me start by asking you both, what motivated you to join this Birthright volunteer program immediately after October 7th?
Well, when October 7th happened, we all saw the images on TV and how horrifying that was. I think for me personally, just seeing the reaction in the United States and how everybody was responding to such a horrible event, and seeing the protests and, in support of actual terrorists, that made me want to come to Israel and actually see what's going on. and then equip myself with the tools necessary to like kind of explain what's going on and just put the situation out there outright.
Now, since you guys arrived on July 29th, you've both been involved in a variety of volunteer activities. You've been painting some of the areas affected by the attacks, food packaging, farming. Is there any particular experience that's been standout to you, that's really impacted you in a longer term, circumstance?
Yeah, so for me, in particular, when we went to, I believe it was a moshav called the Salad Trail. I don't know if you know this place, but one of the, I believe he may have been an owner. Anyways, he had such a traumatic experience after the event that he ended up making these really wonderful necklaces out of the Iron Dome. So this is a remnant from the Iron Dome, and he's carved it into the shape of Israel with a blue dot symbolizing the place where that rocket fell. And I think to me that was really so meaningful to see how he turned something so traumatic into a way of expressing his desire for peace and hope and love for Israel.
That's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
A similar question for you. Birthright, part of their goal is to connect young Jews with Israel and with Israelis. I'm wondering if you have any meaningful relationships or friendships that have been formed through this process that you wouldn't have otherwise had.
Absolutely. So I'm from Australia, and in Australia we're far away from everything America related, Europe related, Israel related. And so it's an absolute pleasure to meet so many people from those different backgrounds. We don't necessarily go to the same schools or have the same sort of family values or even speak the same language, and yet Judaism unites us all, and we can become best friends in a matter of days because we just have this shared appreciation for our religion, for our history, for our heritage, and a shared sort of pain and grief over October 7th. So I worked really closely with an organization called Hagal Sheli, and they do fantastic work working with children from the north that have been displaced, children from the south that have been displaced, kids that are living in Tel Aviv that are struggling with everything emotionally, just taking them out on the water. And so probably the most surprising relationship that I was able to build were with 13-year-old boys and 15-year-old girls from Jerusalem and from bits and places all across Israel that I was able to, again, not necessarily speak the same language, but have the sorts of same emotions and the same feelings and the same experiences that allowed us to transcend language and transcend the fact that we weren't from the same country, but get together. And that was a really, really beautiful experience. So those were the sorts of relationships that even surprised me. I wasn't expecting to build such strong friendships.
What about you? Did you have any relationships that were formed as a result of this volunteering program that you perhaps didn't expect?
Yeah, I think I've made a lot of friends during this program, which is really wonderful. So I've added them all on Instagram. I plan on keeping in contact with them, and maybe we'll come again.
You can always
Israel.
stay.
Yeah. I think I will one day, actually.
Yeah. So as you prepare to return home, do you feel like you're more equipped or I guess qualified to speak about what's going on in Israel and to sort of be an ambassador, a private ambassador for the state of Israel and the things you've experienced through this Mosaic United program, as well as the work of the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs?
Yeah, I think that's one of the problems with being Jewish in America, is that a lot of people are not equipped with the knowledge necessary to actually explain the side, to let the world understand what's really going on. So how can they be an ambassador if they don't have that equipment, right? So coming to Israel with this program is a great way of just learning what's going on, being educated, going to see the sites. We went to the Nova concert site. It was, wow, it was so touching, to be honest. And I plan on going back home and talking to a lot of my non-Jewish friends and telling them what was going on, what I saw, and actually how they can help.
Absolutely. Well, we are out of time, but I want to thank you so much for being here, first of all, and for all the work that you guys are doing. And we hope that you stay, but if you don't, then come back for sure.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for joining us. Drama over the weekend between Turkey and Israel as the Turkish embassy in Tel Aviv thought it would be a good idea to lower their flag to half-mast in honor of Hamas terrorist leader Ismail Haniyeh. Let's take a look at the full story.
On Friday, the Turkish embassy in Tel Aviv lowered the Turkish flag to half-mast as part of Turkish President Erdogan's day of mourning for Hamas terrorist Ismail Haniyeh. But Israelis were having none of this. Shortly after photos began surfacing on social media criticizing Turkey, Israeli Ohad Ben Hemo flew his drone with an Israeli flag affixed and raised it over the embassy. In response to Turkey's move, Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz summoned the Turkish envoy in Israel and posted online that if Turkey wishes to mourn a terrorist, they may do so from Turkey, not Israel. Furious by the Israeli flag stunt, the Turkish embassy raised the Turkish flag fully in response. Turkey's Erdogan has been vociferously anti-Israel throughout the war and has even floated the idea of sending troops to Israel to attack. Erdogan has also given Hamas leadership safe harbor for years and even citizenship in some cases. After the death of Haniya, social media giant Instagram removed a post by Turkish government which praised Haniya, as support for terrorist organization is prohibited on the platform. Erdogan responded by banning Instagram from the entire country. Similarly, in the Olympic Games this weekend, Israeli judoka Raz Hershko defeated her Turkish opponent and went on to win a medal. But after the Turkish athlete was defeated, Turkey cut the entire broadcast of the Games in response. Despite the increasingly authoritarian conduct of Erdogan, Turkey, a NATO member, has been a historically important ally for Israel. Now, however, concerns are rising over Erdogan's continuous embrace of Islamist terror groups.
Well, this weekend has been eventful, to say the least, in regards to the Israeli athletes competing in the Paris Olympics this year. Let's go to ILTV correspondent Devo Klein to discuss their achievements from the weekend. Devo, what can you tell us?
Yes, Emily. So for those who haven't been up to date with the Olympics this year, Israel has received 6 Olympic medals, one of which being gold, in an incredible show of national pride and resilience. Israelis were absolutely glued to their screens this weekend and were absolutely ecstatic when the likes of Tom Reuveni brought Israel the gold medal. And Emily, I find it worth mentioning the absolute incredible sportsmanship displayed by our athletes coming from the world of sport. Myself, I think it's worth mentioning that despite the challenges and, despite the crowd and the competition that can oftentimes get into your head and affect your mood, and also with the security challenges that our athletes have currently been facing, they have been showing immense sportsmanship, and most notably judoka Raz Hershko, looking up at her after placing second at first place, opponent saying, "Smile, this is your moment." But let's go into deeper in the full report. In a historic weekend at the Olympics, Israel wins gold, bronze, and silver medals in windsurfing, gymnastics, and judo events. Israel's Tom Reuveni won a sensational Olympic gold in the men's windsurfing event on Saturday. And in the women's event, Sharon Cantor came second, scoring a silver medal for Israel. Israeli-Ukrainian gymnast Artem Dolgopiat, who won the gold at the Tokyo Games in 2021, performed brilliantly in the men's gymnastics events, securing a silver medal for Israel with his floor routine. The incredible medal-winning Saturday comes after the judo success of Friday and Thursday, when Israeli judokas Peter Palchik, Inbar Lanier, and Raz Hershko won medals in their own respective categories. In Thursday's events, Lanier, adorned with a yellow hair tie to symbolize the hostages, took the silver after an incredible match against Italy in the under 78 kilogram weight class. Palchik, who competed in the under 100 kilogram weight class, won the bronze medal after defeating his Swiss opponent. In an interview, Palchik said, "I fought for everyone, for our flag. We worked so hard for this moment." The third judo medal was clinched by Israeli judoka Raz Hershko after a win against Turkey and her iconic battle against Brazil's Beatriz Souza in the final match of the women's over 78 kilogram weight class.
Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 22 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, partly cloudy skies are expected alongside hot temperatures, reaching highs of 34 degrees Celsius or 93 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.